Call it what you will, personality, charisma, or simply the political presence thrust on her by the reputation of her famous father. Whatever it is, Benazir Bhutto has it. Every day, small groups assemble outside her house. She hears complaints and receives petitions, almost in the manner of an Eastern potentate of old. Yet Benazir Bhutto has no political office, and for the time being, she's not running for one either. But few would contest that in the transformation of her country from martial law to democracy, it might be impossible to deny Miss Bhutto a role. Exiled and imprisoned, Benazir Bhutto is now politically on the defensive. When her call for an early election was ignored, she was compelled to think again. Now she's embarked on a painstakingly slow journey across a political terrain strewn with innumerable difficulties.
Goodbye, thank you.
Every inch of the way, whatever she does is closely observed. Police keep guard outside her house, perhaps for good reason, but on her political forays across the country, they're never far away. Miss Bhutto says they're there to harass and to intimidate her supporters. When we travelled with her out of Lahore, we saw no evidence of that. They were simply there, apparently determined to follow her every move. It had been a lonely, uninspiring convoy which left the city, eliciting at first little interest, save the occasional huddles of people stopping to watch the motorcade go by. But the Bhutto convoy acquired a momentum of its own as it went along, and not long after it began, it was brought to a halt. A group of supporters, warned about the visit in advance, had simply blocked the road. This is a faint echo of the welcome Miss Bhutto had when she returned to Pakistan last April. Thinking that she could storm the ramparts of power, on August 14 in Lahore, she baited the authorities. People were killed, and some felt the campaign had lost direction and momentum.
The momentum is still there, but such a momentum can only exercise itself in a peaceful manner through elections. The regime is refusing to budge from the question of elections, despite the overwhelming repudiation in popular terms. On August 14, the regime came down with a very heavy hand. 40 people died, people were picked up, tortured. So we have decided not to push things so fast, but to pace them out in a manner that will permit us to exercise the popular support at another time where the tension from the bloodshed has gone down.
Is what you're saying tantamount to an admission that you underestimated the strength of the regime?
I was confident that if we played the game by the rules that they had set, we could secure elections in the country.
I think in August she was trapped into confronting the regime rather prematurely. She wasn't ready for it. However, finally she did tell her party cadres to take to the streets, and they were not able to make an impression on the regime. Since then she is drawing far smaller crowds than before. However, at the same time, one must see that if there are elections, if elections are held in this country, she would win a majority. However, in the short term, she does seem to have lost a lot of ground.
But in her journey out of Lahore, that loss of ground wasn't very evident. And whatever she'd lost in volume, her supporters seemed anxious to compensate by their sheer enthusiasm for whatever she said. That in itself may be a problem, because the future of Miss Bhutto's party will depend ultimately on much more than the adulation she clearly attracts. Her view is that the movement which she began faltered only because of the force of government repression. Even those who might agree with that will add another argument. It is that while Miss Bhutto is still able to draw the crowds, her party still lacks structure and basic organizational cohesion.
Basically, in our view, she's surrounded by a lot of fawning flunkies. She has not banked on an organization of the party which was essential in this situation. She is coping with a lot of in-house problems, ideological problems, lack of clarity on issues. And if she had set up a cadre and had good leaders around her, a good team around her, she would have done much better. She's not going to do that.
I think the organization certainly had a great degree of dynamism, but force is force. For instance, I refuse to believe that the people of Indonesia don't want to exercise their rights. I refuse to believe the people of Argentina, Chile, South Africa don't want to exercise their rights. But tyranny is tyranny, force is force, and it was really repression which crushed the movement rather than any lack of dynamism on the part of the party.
What is extraordinary about these scenes is that this is not an election campaign. The purpose of this journey, which became something of a triumphal motorcade through a part of the Punjab, was to enable Miss Bhutto to pay her respects at the home of one of the people killed in the clash with the authorities on August 14. Her visit had only been advertised by a notice in the press. Yet it took us nearly 8 hours to travel a mere 40 kilometers. And nearing her destination, her convoy was virtually swallowed up by the crowd. But crowds alone may be insufficient to propel Miss Bhutto to power in Pakistan. The government will continue to monitor her campaign as it develops, and denied the chance to test her popularity against the ruling party in mid-term elections, she could be faced with a long, debilitating campaign. And even if she survives that, the way ahead will not be easy.
Well, she faces great problems as a woman in a very conservative Muslim society, and a very young woman and a very inexperienced woman. Don't forget, she spent most of her political career in jail. She's had no experience in the political field. She doesn't even know who the major politicians in her party are, and she's learning the ropes slowly.
I think she did get carried away by the Corrie Aquino syndrome, definitely. But I think she's also not quite aware of some of the power realities of Pakistan, the Pakistani power structure, the military, the bureaucracy, and the amount of vested interests which is going to prevent the return of the Bhutto family at all costs.
Many people always tell me, oh, Beinazir, you can afford to wait. Why do you risk so many things? But the country is not. I don't know whether the country has the time, whereas I may have it.
Can you afford to wait?
As a person, I can, but I'm not in politics as a person. I'm there for Pakistan, and for Pakistan, I don't think Pakistan can afford to wait till 1990.
1990 is a reference to the year when the next elections are due. The problem for Miss Bhutto's Pakistan People's Party is that of keeping alive interest in her return and in policies radically different from those of the party in power. Crowds like these have become part of the tradition of politics in the subcontinent. Benazir Bhutto, heir to the possible fortunes of a political dynasty, is only too well aware that if she is to succeed, she must translate this kind of interest into concrete support for her party and for its policies. Trevor MacDonald, ITN, Lahore in Pakistan.